You're listening to Ask the Advocate, a podcast series that features advocates for domestic violence, sexual violence, and all other survivors of abuse and serious crime. I'm your host, Billie Joe Weyant, and for the past 3 decades, I've worked in the victim services industry, serving as the executive director for a Pennsylvania-based nonprofit named CAPSI, which stands for Citizens Against Physical, Sexual, and Emotional Abuse. I invite you to join me as I sit down with my guests each episode to discuss critical victim service resources and to help raise awareness for the most pressing challenges facing survivors and the nonprofit agencies that serve them. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 4 of Ask the Advocate. I'm your host, Billie Joe Weyant, with over 30 years in victim service experience, and I'm also the executive director of CAPSI. And today I have a super special guest with me, Nicole Molinaro. Nicole, you and I go back pretty far, and I think I even go back farther than you, but I think that I was thinking today before we started this, the first time I visited the Women's Center and Shelter of Greater Pittsburgh, where you are the executive director, CEO, it was many, many years ago. And I remember how small CAPSI was. And then I remembered when I walked into those doors and I saw that place that looked so futuristic and beautiful. I aspired to have an agency like that. And I'm almost there, but I'm still aspiring. So, I'd love for you to tell everyone a little more about yourself, and then we'll get into the meat and potatoes of all of this.
Thank you so much. That was such a kind introduction. And I've never heard our facility described as futuristic, so I like that. But we are, so as you mentioned, I'm Nicole Molinaro, very proud to be the president and CEO for Women's Center and Shelter of Greater Pittsburgh. As you mentioned, we go back, and I actually have been involved with the victim services and domestic violence services field for over half of my life now, which I should admit is 25 years. So I became involved with Women's Center and Shelter originally as a volunteer, as a direct service volunteer, and then started in the training center, which was a new endeavor for us about 25 years ago or so. And since then have been involved with our direct services, with our fundraising as the development director. I was our chief program officer and was promoted to president and CEO about 3.5 years ago now. So I'm very proud to be following in some really big shoes, I guess. And Women's Center and Shelter of Greater Pittsburgh has been around actually since 1974, and we owe so much to our founding mothers, Ann Statler, and Carol Berliner. I'm sorry, I'm conflating their daughters and granddaughters' names now because we still work with them, which is amazing.
Isn't it?
Let me try that again. Ellen Berliner and Ann Statler. And we owe so much to them because they started Women's Center and Shelter back in the early 70s, just as a place for women to gather and just be, because there, of course, were few places like that around. And what they found, and because they were both social workers, what they found is that 40% of the women coming to just do crafts and gather actually needed a safe place to stay. And so they were putting people on their couches and in guest rooms and engaging friends in doing this work. And they looked at this and said, we really need to change up and be responsive. Instead of just being a gathering place, we really need to start doing the work around domestic violence. And so in 1974 incorporated, and we're a storefront in the South Hills area of Pittsburgh. And since then have been through multiple moves. And we've expanded our services and our reach greatly. And now we serve over 7,500 survivors, adult and child survivors of intimate partner violence every year. And we have a battering intervention program, offsite, of course, but a battering intervention program for those who use violence and abuse as well. So, but we just had amazing founding mothers who we look to every day for continued inspiration and guidance.
This is just awesome. And again, I am so excited to have you on this episode. And I think this is just, it's going to lead right into what our topic for today is. How do we and how did we grow all and to bring upon all these other programs to help the underserved populations that we deal with? And you started things off beautifully. You spoke about how we all started in such a grassroots in the 70s. CAPSI started in 1977, a group of women in the area, again, needing some place for women and children to go to. And what we've grown, not nearly as big as you, but in our own way and to meet our needs. And I think it is so exciting. And that's why I'm so glad that you are going to be here with us today and talk about some of those programs that you have pioneered at Women's Center and Shelter of Greater Pittsburgh, and for folks to really understand that we network constantly amongst all of us, and we learn from one another and we share ideas. So what you're doing in Pittsburgh, CAPSI could easily bring here, do some tweaking, and really do some great work. And that's what excites me every day. So Nicole, honestly, whatever you would like to start with, I am so excited to hear all about, and I'm sure everybody is, some of the great cutting edge programs that Women's Center and Shelter of Greater Pittsburgh has started.
Oh, thank you so much, Billie Joe. And I really do want to echo what you said about us all working together. Yes. Because I think that we have such a free flow of ideas, and we talk often. And we throw ideas off of one another, and we share ideas. So, so many people, I think, kind of assume that because we're all separate nonprofits, that we just kind of all, put our heads down and do the work. And indeed, the work is so much better when we share ideas and work with one another and partner. And so we have, multiple active formal partnerships with the other domestic violence programs, and specifically for us in Allegheny County. And we, it's critical to work together to be able to best serve the survivors of domestic violence. But we also, of course, work so often with everybody outside of Allegheny County where we are. So, and it's critical to be able to offer offer the best services we all can. So, Women's Center and Shelter has, really provided so many core services, of course, as all of the other domestic violence programs have for so long. And probably about 5 or 6 years ago, we really noticed a deepening in the complexity of the issues that survivors were coming to us with. So, of course, survivors are across every demographic. We all know that. Socioeconomic, race, ethnicity, religion, same-sex, heterosexual, other gender identities. Everybody can possibly experience and does experience intimate partner violence or domestic violence. So, but we were noticing that in addition to that, we were having more survivors who were experiencing mental health issues, who were experiencing drug and alcohol issues. And I think that reflects the larger world, right? Because we are just a portion of the general population, and domestic violence, again, can impact anybody. So, of course, it makes sense that our survivors were coming to us with more complex issues because the world itself has just been becoming more complex. We also noticed a deepening in the danger level, even more so than we had been seeing in many of the situations of our survivors. And sometimes that's because of the availability of guns and other weapons being so, very easily available and being so used. And so we really started to look at how we could, not just widen our reach, because we were always trying to reach as many people we can with quality services, but also how we could really deepen our reach and focus on groups of individuals that we really were not reaching. So we started our refugee immigrant limited English speaking programs because we knew that, first of all, we were not serving the non-English speaking partners of the men who were coming for services in our Batterers Intervention program. So the courts were sending, a wide range of men, including quite a few who didn't speak English as their first language. And we knew from getting to know the men that their partners also did not speak English as a first language, but we were not seeing their partners in our services. And we also were hearing from another partner organization, the Latino Family Center, that we work very closely with, that we needed to improve how we were providing services to their Spanish-speaking populations. And we really, really listened and said, okay, we need to do a better job with this. And so we started our REAL team, which started with 2 advocates, one to work on outreach and one to do internal strengthening. So to develop a multilingual phone line, to do brochures and other educational material in multiple other languages, to do, case management of clients who were in the building that really needed our help. And then, of course, outreach, to be able to reach out to clients in the community who needed help through our other organizations that served the refugee, immigrant, and limited English speaking population. And then since then, we've been able to expand the team to include 2 specialty legal advocates who work in the courts with anybody who's a refugee, immigrant, or limited English speaker. We now have an immigration attorney, and we also have 2 direct service folks who are in our building working in our shelter, our children's program, our front office, and in our hotline. So basically, we want to make an intentional effort to be welcoming. And for us, in an area as large as Allegheny County, that really meant developing a very specialized program that could better serve the refugee, immigrant, and limited English speaking population, because we wanted to be able to provide the same high quality level of services to those in those communities. And so I'm very happy to say our refugee, immigrant, limited English speaking program in the past 5 years has increased our population of real team clients from what was literally a handful to now we serve hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of refugee, immigrant, and limited English speakers every year. So we're very, very proud of that, and the job that we do with them, being able to serve them. So that's one. Should I just jump right into another?
Well, and if I can add something quickly, Nicole, I really want everyone to understand that our networking capabilities are such, and we work so well together, that if someone here in a very small rural setting at CAPC, for instance, we're going to use my program as an example, would run into an immigration situation, which we have in the past, and we were limited and really didn't have anyone to reach out to. Now, this was a number of years ago. But then if we also needed some assistance, we can confidently reach out to Women's Center and Shelter of Greater Pittsburgh and others in our network. I just want everyone to know how widespread the help is and the support.
Yes.
And I think it's grown even more since COVID, since the pandemic.
Absolutely, Billie Joe. And thank you for mentioning that, because our services are here for clients and also for other professionals who may need some assistance or help in effectively serving somebody who is from a specific population. So, thanks for mentioning that.
Absolutely. Hey, absolutely. And then some of your other programs.
Sure. Yeah. So we started a general community outreach program several years ago, and then realized that we weren't reaching individuals who are part of the LGBTQ plus community. And so we started an outreach program specifically working with partner organizations who serve the LGBTQ plus population. And we have, from that partnership, and having an advocate who focuses on that work, we've really been able to, again, increase our population of LGBTQ plus individuals that we serve on-site and off-site. And we've also been able to, form these partnerships with other organizations so that we can help their teams to help their clients who are impacted by domestic violence. So we're very, very proud of the work that we've done with the LGBTQ plus population, which I have to say, we've been serving a lot of younger folks in this population, and the creativity of our team to be able to reach them and doing TikToks and doing, these things that usually when they bring them to me to talk about, I'm like, I don't know what that is. I'm going to have to find out. So, but it's been really a wonderful learning process. And we just, it's been wonderful to be able to use that creativity to reach the populations that really need our assistance and need our help. And again, it's that intentional welcoming. It's by forming a program specifically that says, hey, we know that you may be experiencing domestic violence and we want to be able to help you. And we're really working hard to be able to do that, that I think has helped the population of LGBTQ plus individuals in this area to be able to reach out in an increased way for help. We also have really deepened our CYF, which is Children, Youth, and Families, our Department of Children, Youth, and Families work over the last 4 or 5 years. So we had one advocate who worked with our Allegheny County Department of Human Services, Children, Youth, and Families office. We had one advocate who worked for 17 years with the population of caseworkers. So over 800 caseworkers, right? And so many clients who are impacted by domestic violence. And, thankfully, the county really looked at unfortunately, the lethalities of children and the fatalities and the near fatalities, and realized that domestic violence was one of several factors that was common in over 50% of child fatalities and near fatalities. And so they said, all right, we need to deepen our work. And so we've been able to hire what will now be a team of 5 full-time folks who are co-located in the CYF offices and here at Women's Center and Shelter, who do multiple things. So they work directly with families, of course, who are in need. They work with caseworkers to provide coaching and consultation on specific or general issues around domestic violence. And we provide training so that the caseworkers are better able to work with situations involving domestic violence within their caseload. So we've really been able to increase the number and the depth of the work that we've been doing with CYF. Also important to note is, of course, in any social services, in any profession, there are a certain population or a certain number of folks who are personally impacted by domestic violence. So we've been able to also work with caseworkers who are impacted by domestic violence, not only through their caseload, but in their own personal lives. So we're very, very glad to be able to provide that as an option. Should I jump into the next one, Billie Joe? All right.
All right. You can just keep rolling along.
Great. One of the other programs that we're really proud of is called our INC program, which is our Immediate Needs Coordinator program. So to kind of give a little bit of context and history, Sabrina Corbel, who is now Judge Sabrina Corbel, so we're so amazingly happy and proud for her to have been elected to the bench in Allegheny County. But Sabrina was one of our attorneys and then our legal director for about 17 years here at Women's Center and Shelter before she just very recently became a judge. And for about the first 12 years as an attorney, she would say, you know what, I can do my attorney work. Our team of attorneys can do our attorney work. But the courts are saying to our clients, in order to succeed with custody or, with whatever the civil matter was through our civil law project, you need to have housing, or you need to be able to do this, or you need to be able to do that. And they were all social service issues as opposed to legal issues. And so Sabrina would say, I can help them with their legal issues all day long. I, have neither the expertise nor the time to make these social service connections, though. And so she, was wonderfully persistent in saying, we really need this program. And we were able to find a match for funding finally. And close to, about 5 years ago, close to 6 years ago, we started our Immediate Needs Coordination program, which now works with hundreds of, we've been able to expand it, now works with hundreds of folks who are our clients, but in need of concrete needs, whether concrete needs include utility, shut off or turn on. It might mean a lot of security systems. We do a lot of security systems. We do, needs, help connecting to medical needs for them or their children, insurance. We, literally any need that a domestic violence victim comes with, we can help them. And of course the team helps with safety planning and with emotional support and everything else. It really offers a continuity of care. So if somebody comes into our legal advocacy program and is getting a protection from abuse order in court, they may or may not remain connected to our legal advocates, but our legal advocates can connect them to an Inc. Where they can get that ongoing case management that so greatly can impact their lives and their safety. And then we've also recently started to connect them with our shelter. So anybody who leaves shelter, while they're in shelter, of course, as we all know, they get we wrap our arms around our shelter residents and they're able to get all of those services while they're in shelter. But once they leave shelter, right, most of them actually close to 100% remain connected to services through support groups, through individual counseling, through legal advocacy, through civil law project, et cetera. But there's not necessarily anybody to work on these concrete needs with them. And so that's what the Inc. program does. And we've really been able to help the transition for shelter residents into, their life outside of shelter and free from violence through the Inc. program. So those are our main programs, Billie Joe, that we're happy to be able to support through specialized projects.
They are awesome. And take it from me, somebody that's worked for as long as I have doing this, those critical supportive services, once somebody leaves shelter, when you let somebody out on their own, you're just setting somebody up to fail through no fault of their own. It's because they weren't given those ongoing tools and that follow-up. Right. And that is something that, again, because for many, many years, and that since we all began in the 70s, the early 70s, mid 70s, we've always been very underfunded. Always thought of as being very grassroots, not really being recognized as professional human service programs. And for us to take that and really say, what are the needs of the people we serve? And we're going to add these other programs is just phenomenal. Right. And we do have a couple minutes left, and I'd really love to hear a little bit. I want to hear about the Batterers Intervention program, because remember, for so long, we did victim services. You didn't go into that at all, but you can't Band-Aid things. We need to be very holistic. You must have a very comprehensive approach to this kind of work. Right.
Absolutely, Billie Joe. And if I can just say just one thing, I think that one of the things about domestic violence that strikes me all the time is how it's not necessarily, I say it's not commonsensical, right? So, people say you're in an abusive relationship, just leave, when in reality that can be the most dangerous advice to give a client, because we know that 73% of those who are killed by their partners or ex-partners are killed when they leave or after they've tried to leave. So domestic violence doesn't necessarily follow, kind of good common sense, right? You sometimes need to really think outside of the box around safety planning and think creatively, et cetera. And also, trauma plays so deeply into this, because when you are traumatized, as so many of our clients are, it's really difficult to just kind of think through your options, right? And so that's why it's so important to have somebody who is there to help and talk through and empower you on your journey, so that you're able to really kind of look at the big picture, because trauma is so real. The impacts of trauma can really impact folks as they move forward on their journey. But to get to your question, sorry, Billie Joe, our men's battering intervention program, we've actually been doing battering intervention program work for well over 20 years. And just within the past 7 or 8 years or so, we're certified by our county as one of 4 battering intervention programs. So, obviously, as I mentioned, the program is done off-site. That probably goes without saying, but a lot of people ask that question. But we actually are in 10 different community locations throughout. Wow. Yeah, and it's not kind of our regular footprint of the city of Pittsburgh and and that we kind of like split, so to speak, with the other domestic violence programs throughout Allegheny County. We're really East End and up, so even into the Tarentum area. It's basically just wherever the county has assigned our territory. But we have these 10 different battering intervention program groups, and it's 24 groups plus an intake. And it's for specifically, this program is for men. So we at Women's Center and Shelter, we serve any survivor, regardless of gender identity. But for our men's program, it's specifically for men who use battering, power and control. And it is a program that is really geared at intervention and prevention, as opposed to a support group like we would provide for a victim or survivor. But it's really geared at helping to identify the problematic behavior and giving them the tools to be able to change that problematic behavior. So we measure attendance and completion. We don't measure success. Because, of course, we know that sometimes the savviest batterers are those who participate in the classes and do their homework and, kind of put forward the best foot. Well, indeed, behind closed doors, it can be a different situation. So we don't really ever measure success. We really just measure not even participation. We measure attendance, and we report back to the courts on completion. But we do, of course, believe that people can change if they want to, and if they have the tools and are willing to put in the work to change. So it's all of that, right? You can't just be willing, but not put in the work and have the tools. And you can't just have the tools, but not be willing. But, a combination of factors can really lead to success. And we believe that if our vision is to end violence in the lives of everybody experiencing intimate partner violence, that we need to work with those who are causing the violence, because the victims and survivors are not the issue, right? The issue is those who are causing the violence. So, yeah.
Awesome. Just awesome. We are just about out of time. Nicole, it's been an honor to have you on this podcast. I want you to come back. It's just phenomenal. And I think that you really brought to the forefront for us to have future conversations about how imperative it is for everyone to support the programs that we have out there for our victim survivors, and to really support us in many different ways, because what we do is life-saving work. It really
is, Billie Joe. And, unfortunately, we see every day the fact that is true. But it really is. It's life-changing, and it's potentially life-saving work. So I could not agree more. Yeah.
And I think that our programs being trauma-informed and working and considering what the needs of our clientele is, and then working around that and molding programs to help them, we've proven time and time again, evidence-based, that it's successful. Right. It works, But Nicole, I am so glad that you were here today. I appreciate your time, and I want you to come back. We have a lot more that we can talk about.
Billie Joe, I love talking to you, so I'm happy to come back anytime.
Great. I'm going to hold you to that. But episode 4 of Ask the Advocate has come to a close. And on behalf of Nicole Molinaro from Women's Center and Shelter of Greater Pittsburgh, I'm Billie Joe Weyant, thanking you all, and we'll see you next time. Thanks. Thank you for listening to this episode of Ask the Advocate. If you have a topic suggestion or would like to be a guest on the podcast, you can contact me directly at asktheadvocatepodcast@gmail.com.